It's Coast to Coast, presented by CampusToCanton.com. Jam-packed show for you tonight, covering a loaded week 0 of college football in your college fantasy action. But I need you guys to do two things for me. Go ahead and hit subscribe. Turn on your notifications so that you can know every time we go live for Coast to Coast, like you're watching right now on Saturday night, and then in the morning with the tailgate. So go ahead and subscribe and hit your notifications bell so you can know every single time we go live. And, of course, jump in the chat. Jump in the chat right now and tell us where you are watching from. We start every week here on Coast to Coast with the rundown. Let's go first to the biggest game in this week 0 slate, Austin, Nebraska, and Illinois. It was an ugly upset this afternoon for Scott Frost and company.
Yeah, ugly game is an understatement, Felix. This game was 6-2, I believe, at the end of the first quarter. Not particularly exciting to watch. A few fantasy takeaways, though, I think, from the game. The first big one, Adrian Martinez is as bad as advertised. He is not a good player. He's the only reason he has any worth on fantasy rosters is because Nebraska is going to be playing from behind a lot this year. Ended his day 16 for 32 for 232 and a touchdown in the air. But he had that big 75-yard touchdown run that really saved his day for DFS players. That's going to be Martinez all season. So if you can live with those results, then keep on playing them. Beyond that, at running back, Nebraska trotted out true freshman Gabe Ervin to start at running back. None of their guys in the backfield played particularly well, but Ervin got the first carry, which I think is probably significant moving forward. Marquise Stepp also had a few touches today, had 3 carries for 10 yards and a big 30-yard catch. The wide receiver situation there, extremely murky. Junior wide receiver Oliver Martin was the leading receiver today. If you had him on your fantasy team, give yourself a big pat on the back because you probably are the only person out there. The names that we know on that roster, Samori Toure and Omar Manning, finished a combined 5 catches for just over 60 yards and a touchdown. So they will only be able to go as far as Adrian Martinez does. For Illinois, lost starting quarterback Brandon Peters to what looked like a shoulder injury. We'll see if there's any more updates this week on that. He was replaced by Artur Sitowski, who turned in an efficient performance, but nothing exciting. He probably hurts all the assets there moving forward. The big surprise for the Illini, Chase Brown, who was thought to be their starting running back, possibly was injured early in the game, only got 5 carries. So Mike Epstein handled the majority of that early work. He only really took what the offense gave him, but that was enough for 1675 and 1 on the day. And then Reggie Love III, a guy we've talked about a bit on the C2C pod, also was involved with 12 for 45 on the ground.
Austin, I think we're going to talk a little bit more about that Nebraska wide receiver core a little bit later on in the show, but thank you, and we'll get back to you. Let's bring in Matt Bruning. Matt Bruning, I heard a lot about this Hawaii Rainbow Warriors team, that they could potentially upset Chip Kelly and the UCLA Bruins, but this one wasn't really close at all.
No, unfortunately, it was not close at all, as you just mentioned. We were hoping to see a really good game. We talked early on the morning show, the tailgate, that this was hopefully going to be one of the better games here. As you can see, neither one of the quarterbacks really did much. Devin Cadero just looked off, and I wonder if some of that may have been just due to the fact that they were playing at 11 a.m., what would be Hawaii time. Day Hunter was the leader here in the backfield for the Hawaiian Rainbows, which is a little bit surprising considering how much we love Calvin Turner and everything he has been able to do. He did do some in the receiving game, 5 receptions for 50 yards, no touchdowns. On UCLA's side, Dorian Thompson-Robinson looked okay, not great passing the ball, had a little bit of rushing yards. Greg Dulcich, Britton Brown, and Casimir Allen did a little bit there in the receiving game, 130 yards and 1 touchdown. You can see here for Dorian Thompson-Robinson. The big name, though, who was shit on all morning by Chris Moxley, Austin Nason, Brandon Hay, but loved by my guy Colin Decker, Zach Charbonnet. As you can see there, 6 attempts for 106 yards, 17.7 average, and 3 touchdowns. His draft stock took a massive shot up if you're into very small one-game sample size. But overall, very good game for UCLA. A lot of people saying that they are a sleeper, not just in the Pac-12, but in college football all around. And they came out there and hit Hawaii with a hammer.
I think there's going to be better days for Seven Cordero and company and Calvin Turner. They could be a contender in the Mountain West, but they did not play well today at all. Let's welcome in the Gridiron Scholar, John Laub, co-host of the Draft Seminar with Matt Hicks at NFL Draft Bible. He's a Fantrax contributor, football diehards contributor. You can find him at Gridiron Skull 91 on Twitter. He's also a UConn season ticket holder. John, I'm sure that UConn will see better days after today, but how did this game play out? John, you're muted, John. There we go.
UConn.
Go ahead, John. How did this game play out?
UConn did not show up to play, my friend. There was some buzz that maybe the offense could get things done. Kevin Mensah was the DFS favorite, but he ended up with 11 carries, 31 yards. The offensive line could not open hole for the running game whatsoever. Ronnie Rivers showed us what he's made of for Fresno State. There's no question that Rivers he's a legitimate prospect, but, we have to look at him. He's a fifth-year player, but he had that huge pass reception for the touchdown. Rivers ended up with a very nice 58 yards rushing on 13 carries. He ended up with 66 yards on only 2 receptions and the big touchdown. There was nothing of note in the quarterback here for UConn. I mean, they didn't throw the ball further than 10 yards down the line, past the line in scrimmage. It was all dink and dunk all afternoon. We did have some nice quarterback performance from Jake Hayner. I know, Felix, you've been talking about Jake Hayner. Look at exceptional arm strength. There's no question about that. Now, the numbers looked a little bit better. You saw the long touchdown by Jalen Cropper. UConn did not wrap. They did not tackle. It was an embarrassment in the secondary. But Hayner showed us everything we've been talking about in this summer with the arm strength. Big week next week. He's going to Oregon. I cannot wait to watch him again. Now, he got dinged, but I think they were up 35-0 or something, 31-0. They took him out. They brought in Logan Fife. No reason to bring him back. On the pass-catching side, Jalen Cropper, 3 for 87, but I believe his touchdown was 86 yards. So that leaves him with 2 receptions for 1 yard outside of the big play. And I've seen this from the UConn secondary for years. Go watch it on YouTube on the long touchdown. He literally has 4 UConn members of the secondary, and no one could tackle him. It was an embarrassment by the Huskies. I was impressed by Josh Kelly. I thought he played well in this game. Fresno State has talent on the offensive side of the football. They will help our college fantasy football teams.
Felix, you're muted. Did that whole bit muted.
Yeah, we're moving into whose stock is up and whose stock is down after today. Bruning, are you jumping in here? Cool, take me out.
Man, first show. Look at us go here. All right, guys. So I know limited slate here of games. You only have 3 that have played so far today to really choose from. So options are limited here. But John, I want to come to you first. Was there anybody that you watched today that you thought probably improved their stock in some way?
I think there is only one in my book, Zach Charbonnet of the UCLA Bruins. And this is really an indictment of Jim Harbaugh and the Michigan Wolverines. There is something wrong with Harbaugh. Think about this team a couple years ago. Nico Collins, Donovan Peoples-Jones, and Zach Charbonnet. And he could do nothing with that offense. Zach Charbonnet today, let's put it into context. That offensive line of the Bruins Whenever I watch offensive football, it starts with the offensive line. And whatever Hawaii, they were not prepared. Their front seven, UCLA literally beat the shit out of them at the line of scrimmage. I know everyone's talking about the running backs. I get it. But you know why Charbonnet was incredible? That offensive line, I did not see a rainbow get past the line of scrimmage in the run game in the first half. There were literally rainbows on their back, and they were getting hit 5 yards off the line of scrimmage. Now, put that aside. Charbonnet showed us speed, strength, vision, and he took advantage of what was in front of them. Good blocking only matters if you have a running back who takes advantage of the holes, and Charbonnet showed that. Next week is I think his college career is going to be defined against this game against LSU. LSU now has film. LSU is going to be able to deal with the UCLA offensive line. There is going to be some snot knocking when we watch LSU's defensive front seven come up. That Bruins offensive line is good, big, and nasty. They have at least 2 NFL picks up front. We know LSU is going to bring the heat. They're going to pressure UCLA. Let's see what happens. But if Charbonnet could have another good game, he's not going to repeat. Come on. 6 for 106 and 3 touchdowns. But if he could show us that speed and that strength, that he's a legitimate, I believe he was a 5-star prospect coming out, right? Michigan blew it. I mean, now we really see how bad Harbaugh was. I mean, it's a comedy act that he could not get this kid on the field and get him in space. Because what you saw today was an offensive coordinator with Chip Kelly, got Charbonnet in space, let him use his vision and his speed and his size. Now, LSU is going to close the gaps. Their safeties and linebackers are going to be there quicker. But I can't wait to see the battle. But Charbonnet, by far, showed us what we thought we saw 2 years ago when he walked onto the Michigan campus.
UCLA really dominated the trenches that game in both sides of the ball. It was brutal. Colin, do you want to victory lap it all here? You get 30 seconds from talking about him this morning.
Oh man, how do I first of all do better than John just did? I mean, his description was fantastic. I can't do it justice in 30 seconds. I'm not going to victory lap too much on day one. All I'm going to say is he had a role. He looked fantastic. And let's go Bruins.
It would be good for college football if the Bruins upset LSU. It would make the Pac-12 interesting and be good for college football.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. That Pac-12 definitely needs a shot in the arm for this year. Yeah. Matt, do you have a guy that stood out to you today?
I do, but I got to ask Colin. So next week when Penn State beats Auburn, are you going to put the Penn State hat on? Like
Penn State. I have a Penn State hat too, but it's Wisconsin next week. So when they beat Wisconsin,
gotcha. That's right.
Yes, I will have the Penn State hat.
Since John and Colin both talked about Zach, I'll say I thought Jalen Cropper looked really good today. We talked a little bit about him as well this morning. I think he has some sneaky NFL upside. Obviously, most of his yards is 87, 86 came on the one touchdown pass, but I still thought it looked really good. Obviously, would have loved to see more out of him playing a team like UConn, but I think overall he still looked really good. A lot of speed, good after the catch. I think he's the guy we talked, like I said this morning, that has sneaky NFL upside. So I think his stock raised a little bit today as well.
All right. Conversely, guys, I'll go to you first here, Colin. Is there anybody that you watched today that just looked out of their depth, someone that you thought probably hurt themselves a little bit? I know it's one game, so kind of hard to say that sometimes.
Yeah, with one game, it's tough to say. And I know Hawaii has a very good secondary, and UCLA's offensive line just beat up on Hawaii, and they just ran the ball all over them. But DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, did not look great today. As a passer, 10 for 20, 130 yards and a touchdown. Not great. He struggled a little bit early. They got up big, so they didn't need him in this one, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on going into next week with LSU, where they're not going, like John touched on, they're not going to be able to dominate the trenches like they did against Hawaii. They're going to need him to step up throughout the season and especially next week if they're going to make some noise. So I don't think he necessarily hurt himself, but it's definitely a to monitor situation.
Yeah, if he didn't hurt himself, he certainly didn't help himself. Missed high very, very often there early. John, do you have a guy that disappointed you a little bit today?
Well, I have to agree with Colin, and I'm not as high on Dorian Thompson-Robinson as an NFL prospect as others. I see the athletic ability, but he needs to make a huge leap in my book. And what I saw today, if he plays like that against LSU, the Bruins are going to get whooped, folks. If he makes those mistakes, those LSU defensive backs are going to pick the ball off, and if they don't block up front, he's going to make fumbles, get sacks. So he needs to improve. Now, I think what happened, he came out nervous. What is he like? 0 for 4, 0 for 5. He was really, he's overthrowing. He had a wide open touchdown. I think he missed on his first or second throw of the game. He should have hit that one. So I'll give him a little bit of nerves. But if that happens against LSU, they're in trouble because they're not going to get 45-yard touchdowns rushing the football. So I think it's a big game for TDR next week to keep his NFL Devy stock at least where it is.
It will definitely be a legacy maker there for him. All right, John, thank you so much for coming on here tonight. Again, for anybody that wants to find John, you can find him at GridironSkull91 on Twitter. His work with the draft seminar with Matt Hicks at NFL Draft Bible, and then over on Fantrax and Football Diehards as well. Thanks for coming on, John. We appreciate it.
Thank you, gentlemen. Have a great night. Enjoy the football next week.
You too. All right, next here, guys, we have, as we did on this morning show, we have Jerrick stopping by with a little bit of a pre-recorded message here on Dwayne Mcbride.
Thanks, Felix. Dwayne Mcbride stands at 5'11", 220 pounds from UAB. Last year was his freshman season, where he played a total of 6 games. In those 6 games, he had 47 rush attempts, 439 yards, and 4 rushing touchdowns. He didn't have any receiving work or return work, though. His dominator rating, which is his share of the total offense, was 12%. His backfield dominator rating, which is his share of the backfield work, was 16%. His yards per team play was 0.72. Now, since this is his freshman year, he is working behind other running backs. These numbers don't tell us a ton. So let's dig a little further. Per PFF, he earned a 93.8 rushing grade. That's number 2 for all RBs with no minimum rushing threshold for this last year. He had 21 missed tackles forced, which equates to 45% missed tackles forced rate. Led RBs with yards created per rush attempt just over 6.75 yards. Led RBs in breakaway run rate with over 20%, which is crazy. He already owns the 2 longest rushing TDs in UAB history as well. So I hope that equates to some speed on the field too. Now looking at team situation, his coach, Bill Clark, loves running. His RB1 is almost locked in for 250 carries. Since taking over, it's happened every season but one, not including the COVID year. In neutral game scripts, last year they ran the ball about 56% of the time. The average of all college teams is 51%. So they like to run the ball, yeah. They return all but 1 offensive lineman, including 2 first-team Conference USA players. The lead back for the 2020 season, Spencer Brown, declared for the 2021 NFL Draft and left behind almost 50% of the backfield work share. McBride was quoted as having good hands out of the backfield by the offensive coordinator back in May. In summary, Dwayne McBride looks like he's in a position to absolutely smash this year and next. And if he can step it up in the passing game, the sky is the limit. Now back to you, Felix.
And Jerrick Backous is with us every week to talk by the numbers. We welcome in Shane P. Hallam. Shane, co-host of the Devy Marketplace with Kane Fassell. He's the managing partner of Draft Countdown, and you can find him at Shane P. Hallam on Twitter. Shane, we talked a little bit about Dorian Thompson-Robinson's performance earlier tonight. From your perspective, as an evaluator, it wasn't great tonight. What did you see?
I really thought it kind of put a nail potentially in his coffin for the NFL draft. I think it was actually a little more dire than both Colin and John kind of gave it credit for. This is Hawaii, and even with a decent secondary there in Hawaii, if you want Dorian Thompson-Robinson to be a top 100 pick in the NFL draft, he has to perform. It doesn't have to be high volume. They ran the ball, but he has to perform, and he didn't. That first drive was terrible. Missing a wide open touchdown. Even his athletic ability and movement ability wasn't really on display too much in this game. So to me as an evaluator, I want to see you dominate the easy games. And if you struggle a little bit more with the harder teams, I can understand it. And he just hasn't shown development. That's the biggest thing. He hasn't gotten better. And I think this game kind of showed that he hasn't quite gotten better.
Shane, in what areas would he need to improve if he would improve his draft stock through the rest of the season?
I think there's two big areas. First, I think is footwork. I think he really needs to firm up that technique. And he's been playing now for UCLA for a number of years. I think that's something I would have wanted to see improvement on this season, this first game. Maybe it can still come, but usually at this point, if it hasn't happened yet, it's rare to happen. He definitely plays a little bit wider. He takes the step backs a little bit wider. When he isn't hitting his first read, you can see those feet start to get happy. And that leads to the second problem, and that's just accuracy and kind of with that decision-making. That, his accuracy, he throws high when he doesn't know exactly what he's doing, when he gets uncomfortable. And today we saw that in pockets where he wasn't even getting pressured. So what's going to happen when he does get pressured? So I think that's the biggest thing, is he just doesn't look like he's a natural quarterback, and that's going to be a problem at the NFL level. You can have all the athletic ability in the world, but it's not going to help when you have to throw against NFL defenses.
And, we're looking for the next Joe Burrow, the next Zach Wilson, the player to make a jump kind of in their final season before going to the NFL. It sounds like you don't consider Dorian Thompson-Robinson to be a candidate for the next Zach Wilson or Joe Burrow, at least after today's game.
I don't think that's going to be the case. If Chip Kelly wasn't his coach, I'm not sure if we talk about him as much as we have been. So I think we'll have to look elsewhere to find that guy.
Shane Hallam, you can find him at Shane P. Hallam on Twitter. Shane, we appreciate you joining us.
Thanks so much, Felix.
Thank you. Let's welcome in Kevin Coleman, the bearded one, for our left coast check-in. Kevin Coleman is going to check in with us every single Saturday night to give us an update on the games that are going on currently. Of course, he's the co-host of the Devy Royale, a Devy contributor at Fantasy Pros, and now a contributor also at Campus to Can. He's everywhere. You can find him at DuBois_22. It's the DuBois_22. Kevin, just a few games to check in today. Utep versus New Mexico State. How is Deion Hankins and company looking? Kevin, you're muted.
Gosh. Look at this. What a rookie mistake on the first show. This is Felix's fault. Austin, don't get mad at me. But what I will say is, UTEP's look great, and there's a reason why I picked them to win this game. 17-0 already. New Mexico shouldn't really be in Division I anymore. But Deion Hankins, 5 carries, 23 yards, and a touchdown. He looked pretty good. Ronald Awa has gotten 4 carries and 43 yards and a touchdown as well. So they look good. Gavin Hardison, quarterback there at 108 yards. But at UTEP, this is all UTEP. New Mexico might be one of the worst teams besides UConn in college football. So, but Hankins looks good. I really liked him. I love his size. It looks like he's running really well. So that was a great, I think you called him out too. I think that's a great guy for Campus to Can as well.
What quarter is it? What's our score, Kevin?
So 17-0 into the first already. So New Mexico State's giving up 17 points first quarter.
And UTEP was a favorite in that game. Let's talk about San Jose State, Southern Utah versus San Jose State. San Jose State is a very good team, and they're taking on USC next week in a game that some think that San Jose State could actually pull the upset after playing in week 0 and getting kind of the rust off and getting their feet wet before USC can. How are they looking tonight?
So it basically just started, and I was watching a little bit of it. They scored right before it came on, so there's about 12 minutes left in the first. It's 7-0. This game, I mean, the line was -28 San Jose State, and I think it's going to be clear that they're gonna go ahead and probably easily cover here. But for me, for you guys, you talking about like can they upset USC? For me, it's all about Nick Starkel and what can he do. Last year we saw what he did. Second team out Mountain West, and he kind of led that team to a Mountain West championship, and that's the game that's going to be there. So if Starkel can get out there, they kind of get this out. You know what? USC's primed to get upset, and we know that about Helton and everybody there. So it's going to be a fun game, I think, next week.
Kevin, thank you for checking in with us. Of course, we will check in with you next week and every week for the Left Coast check-in. Appreciate it, man.
Hey, man, I'm just glad I invited on. I'll see you guys next week. Better games next week, everybody. So we'll be able to get through some better games.
Thanks, Kev.
Yep.
So Chris and I are here to recap the day's action so far. We had a wonderful morning show. I was all jacked up. It was going to be a great, great day, and it wasn't as great as we wanted. Chris, what went wrong?
Oh, what went right? It just felt like nothing was going right on this slate for us. We faded Adrian Martinez hard, and I think that was process-wise the right choice. And so I've been thinking about that. He was very popular and
so popular. You said 70% in one of the
one of the contests that I'm in. He was up to 70%, but he was above 50 and everything else because he was cheaper, right? And so a lot of people had him, and I think the process that we arrived at was good because I don't think either of us really expected him to play hero ball the whole game. That's what he's forced to do.
Like, he doesn't have a broken play 75-yard touchdown run. He still had a bad game. I mean, 232 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown. If not for the 100-yard bonus and the touchdown on the ground, we're still talking about maybe an under 20-point performance for a quarterback, which that's never going to play. And in the end, he did have that, what was it, I guess, essentially 75 yards plus a touchdown, 13 points, plus the bonus, 3 more points. He had a 16-point play. Like, he was so bad. He could not put a pass into his receiver's hands if his life depended on it, and probably should have had 3 picks, ended up with 0 picks.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I think the process that led us to fading Martinez was the assumption about the game. And I think based on what Vegas told us, based on what we knew about Adrian Martinez, that the process was correct. I think the results just didn't really play out.
Big misses for me were Martinez. I think if you had a Martinez Hainer stack, which you very well could have had, having Hainer and DTR, Hainer and Cordero, and not going down to Martinez required that you had to have. We talked about this. One of the bargain running backs we liked, Morrison, and then we flipped to Irvin. And also Kevin Mensah, and in the end, they all were bad.
Kevin, before I came up, I was watching the end of UConn, and they were still running Kevin Mensah.
Yes,
I don't think they were wrong about that. He just wasn't able to break one, and they scored 0 points. That's all we needed. We just needed to break like a 40-yard run, and we were golden. He was running, and they were down 45.
They fed him back plays down 45. Yeah, and Turner playing almost exclusively receiver, kind of slot receiver, was interesting. I think he had 4 for 40 something in the first half, so I think he can certainly still pay off if he gets in the zone or something like that. But yeah, he's not that dual threat. I think they've just converted him to wide receiver pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. And then the UCLA, unless you had Britton Brown, who we were on. I really like. I like Britton Brown all week, but nobody was really playing Charbonnet. I was wrong about their split.
There wasn't a lot of touchdowns to go around. I mean, there were the 3 guys from Fresno. There was Adrian Martinez. there wasn't a lot to go around. If you didn't have Martinez and Hainer, I think you're screwed. And I bet you a lot of the catching lineups had Hainer and Martinez. I would say let's toot our own horn for a little bit. I mean, I think we got a couple of things right. We faded Jared Smart. That looked good. He's not doing anything. He's not even getting targets, for crying out loud. We did not like I don't know what else did we do right. I feel like we did. Josh Kelly was okay. He was worth 4,400, I guess.
Cameron Ross didn't have a big game, but he had at least 10 targets. At least 10 targets.
It's one of those where the quarterback just could not.
Oh, Zergiotis. I brought him up earlier today. I am so sorry I even said his name. I was so wrong. I just
I mean, you know,
terrible.
he was very, very bad. But yeah, Cam Ross ended 5 for like 37, which is pretty disappointing, but he could have been, like you said, like 10 targets, you know, connect on did he drop or was overthrown on like an 80-yard touchdown?
So it was overthrown. There was holding on the play, so it would have been called back anyway.
Oh,
But he got wide open on a great route, and it was overthrown by like 10 yards.
yeah.
He's a good player. We are a pro Cameron Ross podcast.
Yeah, I'm down with Cam Ross. They play. I saw on Twitter someone was like, "Oh no, Nebraska plays Oklahoma soon," and then someone else was like, "UConn plays." I don't know, some other. I mean, they have a powerhouse on their schedule coming up, and it's just going to be a disaster.
Yeah,
hopefully it won't even be on the slate. I don't love those like so lopsided, but it provides an interesting strategy decision. But I don't. It's so hard to know what's going to happen in those games that get so out of control.
So I will also say, if we're tooting our own horn, we got a lot of the betting stuff right this week.
Yeah, we're looking good there.
If we spread on the Hawaii game, so far we're looking great. I think we're doing really, really well.
Right over every single angle of the Illinois-Nebraska game was right. On Hawaii, I just really thought UCLA was going to come out flat because Chip Kelly historically has been atrocious, especially early in the season. He can't cover spreads. And watching the game, I mean, in the first quarter, I was like, this is going to be a problem because they just overwhelmed Hawaii. I mean, overwhelmed Hawaii.
Not even the same. Doesn't even look like the same sport, to be honest. Yeah. They're just so much better.
Yeah. So I had a feeling. I mean, I guess there's an outside shot at some backdoor cover because the spread's so big, but it looks pretty bleak. They cannot do. But we still got San Jose State later. You got UTEP going, and then the late slate. Maybe we'll redeem ourselves.
Hey, you know, all in on Deion Hankins. So.
Hankins and Cowing. All right. Well, it was a rough week 0, but we have a full slate next week. We are coming back. Stay with us, folks. If you're playing DFS, you know sometimes this is the way the cookie crumbles.
And back to you guys.
We appreciate Alfred and Chris Moxley. They will be wrapping up DFS every weekend for us here on Coast to Coast. We welcome in Tera. Tera, contributing analyst with Fantasy Pros, co-host of Dynasty Vipers, but she is a Clemson grad. You can find her at It's Tera Time. Tera, you know, this is one of the biggest games of the year, absolutely. How do you see this one playing out?
You know, I mean, I like starting the game or the season off with a big game because I think it kind of leaves a little room to to take care of things if you do mess up in the beginning. But I fortunately do see it playing out that Clemson does come out with the victory. I think we're going to take it 31-24. I think it'll be a pretty close game overall just because of the magnitude of the game, the beginning of the season, two teams that are very familiar with each other, and you know we're dipping into the same recruiting area. So I think it'll be a lot closer than some people are saying, and I think that Clemson does pull it out. So in terms of how the game would actually affect the season, I don't think either team is really going to be massively effective if they lose. Georgia obviously is going to have a lot of chance to. I'm not a big SEC fan, but they're going to have a lot of chance to make up ground as long as they don't have a huge loss. And from Clemson's perspective, it's a little bit more difficult for us to overcome a loss, but as long as we don't get blown out and we keep it close and it's a really good game, I think we'll have the opportunity to obviously win out, then head to the ACC championship game, and provided that the other side of the conference does their part. And I'm really excited about North Carolina in particular, and hopefully they get to the championship game and can provide a good opponent for us. And, regardless, we can end up in the playoffs. So I think it's going to be a good game. I think, I like JT Daniels. I think he's a great talent, but he may not have the experience in a big game like this that DJ's actually had in the past when he had to step in for Trevor last year. So he might be prone to making a few mistakes. He might be making some key mistakes along the way that will give our defense an opportunity to make some plays, hand the ball over, and give us an extra opportunity to kind of push things over the edge.
And JT Daniels, of course, is going to be without George Pickens, without Darnell Washington, without Eric Gilbert in that game. Tera, DJ Uiagalelei, I saw him in a Dr. Pepper commercial today. For those who may not have been paying attention last season, you mentioned him having to step in for Trevor Lawrence. He had to step in against Boston College and against Notre Dame and performed really, really well for a true freshman who was just in high school a few months prior. But what is it about DJU that will have him become a face of college football as he takes the helm from Trevor Lawrence?
I think he's just such a complete player. He's got the entire package. And I think that from the get-go, he's got a presence that's really going to be able to take on a leadership role, lead the team. And I'm not too concerned about his age. I think that he's ready to step up and have that big moment. It's not unusual for us to see a freshman come in and have that big moment and be able to take the team to a championship game and succeed. And I think he's got that caliber, that mentality as well. So I think he's going to be a star in the league.
Everybody's going to want to know two things about Clemson, Tera. That's, who we should own from a skill position perspective. There's a lot of names at wide receiver: Justin Ross, Frank Ladson, E.J. Williams. They brought in two Collinses as freshman wide receivers. Yes. For who do you see emerging as the main target for DJ Uiagalelei out of those guys? Or if there's someone I didn't name, who do you see becoming the main target?
I think it is going to be Justin Ross. Just when you look at the talent level and what he's had to go through, I predicted he's going to have his Amari Rodgers moment. Amari came back off that injury and really, and it might be a different situation because I think Justin is more poised to be a higher pick, obviously, but Amari really came in there and used that opportunity, that motivation of coming back, and really played his way through the season and raised his draft stock. So I think Justin's going to have the same opportunity. He's going to step in there. He's going to be the leader now. And, of all the guys that are on the team, he has championship experience. He was on the national championship team. He's been around wide receivers who have been leaders. So he's gotten to be with Amari Rodgers. He's gotten to be with T. Higgins, Cornell Powell. So he's been in a situation where he knows how to handle this and he can help lead the other guys. Aside from Justin, the other guys, Frank Ladson, Joe Nada, obviously had a lot of injuries last season that they were dealing with and kind of hindered them. But I do anticipate that they're going to be able to step it up. And, putting Justin Ross as the obvious main target aside, the person who I see stepping up next from that would be Frank Ladson. The way I look at it is I kind of look back to that time period where we had Sammy Watkins and DeAndre Hopkins and Martavis Bryant all at the same time period. And DeAndre and Sammy were fantastic and incredibly talented, but Martavis was that deep threat that really just kind of helped pull it all together. And I think that Ladson can be that guy. He can be an incredible deep threat. You got to love receivers out of Florida. And I think he just really has the opportunity to come in, be healthy, and step in and be that guy that really expands the field.
Clemson got a lot out of Travis Etienne at the running back position over the last 4 years. A decorated player for your Tigers. Now we move forward to this season. They brought in a very decorated freshman, all-purpose skill set. Is it going to be him? Is it going to be the freshman, or is it going to be one of the incumbents that takes the reins at the running back position?
So I think it'll be Linjay. And, I think his talent, his seniority is going to give him that opportunity. But what a lot of people, for you guys, obviously you guys know, but a lot of people in general maybe don't know the depth to which we rotate backs at Clemson, just from perspective. I know that was a big knock on ETN last year, and people just weren't aware of that his usage kind of within Clemson. We just typically don't go with a workhorse back, and we do a lot of rotations, and everyone gets a chance and everyone has their role. So obviously Linjay is really going to lead things off, but I would look out for Shipley, whose name I love because I'm in Houston and it always makes me think of Shipley's Donuts. But the 5-star recruit out of North Carolina, I've seen comps for him to Joe Mixon, which is incredible. He's, fast, he's physical, he seems to have it all together. You got to love a running back that is also a great pass catching back, especially within our offense. That's really a necessity that you have to have. So I think that, he's blessed to be in the Clemson offense where he'll immediately be able to come in there and get a chance to play. And he might get in there, he might shine, get the opportunity, and be able to split good time with Linjay Dixon and be able to make an impact.
Tera Victoria, you can find her on Dynasty Vipers, Fantasy Pros. You can find her everywhere on Twitter at Tera Time. Tera, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, we're going to continue to look forward here to some of the bigger Week 1 storylines. Let's bring in all the Campus to Canton crew. Matt Bruning, Colin Decker, Austin Ace. What's up, fellas? Let's talk about this Ohio State quarterback situation. Obviously, C.J. Stroud named the starter, which is, what do we see? Do we think that they'll use any sort of 2 quarterback system, or is this just a matter of it's going to be, at the end of the season, these guys Kyle McCord, Jack Miller, Quinn, maybe even Quinn Ewers, that they're going to be transferring somewhere if C.J. Stroud plays the way we expect him to play. Bruning, I'll throw that to you first. And of course, Bruning's going to unmute himself. And
everybody's done it today. There we go. Hey, look, now we just need Colin to do it. We'll be good to go today. We talked a little bit about this on Devy Debate. I expect Kyle McCord and Miller to transfer for sure. I don't think Quinn's going anywhere. I think he is the future of the program. Outside of a Stroud injury, I don't see him playing bad enough to get benched. So I imagine he's going to play all season long. So I think he's going to be the starter this year. We'll go into a quote-unquote quarterback battle next season where I expect Quinn will either actually win it or be given the job, because I still believe he's the better quarterback than C.J. Stroud, and he's going to elevate the players around him. Not that C.J. Stroud can't, but I think Quinn Ewers he's a better prospect, better player. He's a program-changing quarterback, in my opinion.
Austin, are you going to get tired of the storyline? Because, we're going to talk about it every week. Everybody's muting themselves.
I didn't mute myself. I did not mute myself, so that's the problem here. Stop muting me. My hot mic's not on in the back. Stop it. All right. Yes, I'm tired of it. I'm going to sit out a Devy Debate for the next 12 months. I literally have no interest in talking about this topic ever again. Yes, people are going to transfer. I don't know what else you want me to say about this. Yes, people are going to transfer. They're going to go play other places. They're going to be good at other places. Everyone's going to say Ohio State fucked up. That's what we're looking at here.
Colin, let's move on to another quarterback situation that you were right on. Casey Thompson over Hudson Card, but I think this one's a little bit different than the Ohio State quarterback situation. I think that we're going to see Casey Thompson in Week 1 get a drive or two, depending on the game. That's another game where folks are thinking that Louisiana could potentially upset Texas after they upset Iowa State. And Louisiana has a lot of players coming back. But anyway, in reference to the quarterback situation itself, Hudson Card is the starter, but I think that Casey Thompson's going to have a role. What say you?
I agree with you on this one. My prediction was Thompson gets the start week 1. They struggle against Louisiana. They flipped a card because it's been so close all off season. And then Card, brings them back because, they'll have to shake off a little bit of rust at the beginning of the year here. Sark, a new team, new offense. It'll take a little bit of time for them to gel. And Louisiana is no joke. They're ranked number 23 in the country this year. They bring back a lot of players from a really good team last year. I am a little bit worried about Hudson Card in week 1 here. Just if the offense in general, like I said, I think they may get off to a rough start. I do think Casey Thompson is going to have a bit of a role here in week 1. But ultimately, Hudson Card is the more talented player. I think Hudson Card keeps a hold of this job, gets a stranglehold of it, because The Athletic released an article today where they were kind of highlighting this battle. And there's a source in there. They said, wait till you see this kid. They said, it's not like Casey isn't good, but this kid, Hudson Card's upside is through the roof. He's so accurate. He's really athletic. It's impressive stuff. Another former Texas coach who has nothing to benefit from hyping up Hudson Card said Hudson has a chance to be special. He's ridiculously good. He can really spin it, makes good decisions. He has a lot of the it factor. So I think Hudson Card is really, really good. I think he took a little bit of time to develop. He still needs to develop, but he has such a high ceiling. I think he's going to hit it with Sark's offense. And I think eventually he'll put Casey in the rearview mirror.
Now that Austin, now that he's actually been declared the starter, what is his ceiling, and what should we be considering his value to be, in relation to that 2023 class?
I think it's a total wait and see. I think him and Haynes King, it's going to be like a tale of two cities. It's a tale of two quarterbacks in Texas. Those careers are mirroring each other at the moment. Haynes King obviously on a better team overall. Texas is not the squad that Texas A&M is, but two very athletic guys that were a little raw, rough around the edges. Needed at least a year to sit. Both of them did. Now it's time for both of them to kind of, show what they've got. I'm not buying the whole, I get that maybe Sark, was a little hesitant to name a starter because they don't have anybody else in that team. And if Casey Thompson or whoever were to transfer a couple months ago, they would have had nobody. I'm not buying that Hudson Card is special in practice. Hudson, because he would have been named the starter a while ago, because then teams know, the locker room knows when you're jerking them around. The locker room would have known if Hudson Card looks like the next coming and Casey Thompson looks fine, they would have known who the guy was. So I'm not buying that whole spiel about, Card being great. Both of them were just amazing. I actually don't think either of them is the answer. And I'm not really sure that Malik Murphy is either, but I think Malik Murphy can come in and push Card next year. Now, I'm not predicting he's going to take the job. I'm not calling who thinks every true freshman is going to start. But I don't think Card's the answer there, and neither is Thompson.
Malik Murphy, the 5-star quarterback who's coming in next year's class, went to the same high school as Tom Brady in California. As we look forward to week 1, the real week 1 in college football, September 4th, in addition to that Clemson-Georgia game, which is massive, Alabama takes on Miami. Jerrick King, I believe, is going to be healthy. Matt Bruning, if I gave you 10 points for Miami, would you take the points, or would you go with Alabama?
I'm going with Alabama. I just don't think Miami has the talent to keep up with them. Maybe it's close for the first half, but I still think Bryce Young, even though we haven't seen much of him, is going to be a really good quarterback. They've got weapons all over that offense. We jokingly say not jokingly, we talk about Ohio State a lot. The fact that a dude couldn't get on the field there and then is going to Alabama and playing just shows how good that wide receiver room is going to be there as well. You got Jamison Williams, all those freshmen. They've got, I think running back wise, they've got two really good guys in Jace McClellan, Brian Robinson Jr., who are likely going to be the two lead guys there. Defense, I think, might take a little bit of a step back compared to what we're used to seeing from Alabama, but they're still going to be good enough to keep Miami's offense in check for most of the game. I don't think Jerrick King is a game-changing quarterback that's going to kind of flip the tide for them and get that win against Alabama.
Hey, Colin, we mentioned it earlier, but the week 1 game, USC and San Jose State, I don't think that most people are looking at this game as a potential upset, and maybe it's not, but we're definitely going to see how strong the Mountain West is after Hawaii got curb stomped today and Fresno State as strong as they looked. And then the real test for the conference is San Jose State going to USC and seeing if they can get their second win against a top 15 team. What do you see in that? What do you see happening in that game?
I mean, I think this game really comes down to USC's offense versus San Jose State's defense. San Jose State has a very good defense, especially for a Mountain West team. Mountain West as a conference, a little weaker on the defensive side, but San Jose State is solid. Now, it's going to come down to the way that Keaton Slovis looks at the quarterback position. I think Keaton Slovis is good enough that he's going to cut up San Jose State's defense as good as they are. But, Keaton Slovis hasn't looked great this whole offseason. He's been battling some injury issues where he at the end of last year, he sounds like he's recovered from those. But those injury issues have affected his confidence as a whole. So we'll see how he comes out, if he looks like the Keaton Slovis more from his freshman year or if he looks more like the Keaton Slovis from last year. But then at that point, I think that the receiving core, the way that shakes out is also going to be interesting because they've had some injuries there as well. With Jake Smith getting hurt, Brew McCoy being dismissed from the team. So I'll be interested to see who outside of Drake London also emerges as an option in that receiving core.
Matt Bruning, let's go to your Ohio State University Buckeyes. Starting the season off with Minnesota. Minnesota is not necessarily a pushover, and Ohio State has a lot of moving parts. And a lot of new pieces there. Are they just going to run over Minnesota, or how do you see this one playing out?
No, not at all. I do think Minnesota, while they're not going to challenge, I think, Ohio State where their weakness is, which is the secondary. I don't know that Tanner Morgan and I know Ahmed Bell, I believe, is coming back or should possibly be healthy by week 1. Can Daniel Jackson take advantage of that secondary? I don't think so. But that running game is going to be good. And outside of that defensive line, the linebackers I don't trust that much for Ohio State. So I do think Ibrahim could go out there and have a very good game. If they're able to play good enough defense with, Austin, I think he mentioned this on the Campus to Canton podcast with Colin. You're throwing CJ Stroud out there he took a total of 6 snaps last year. He's going out there in his first game in the big lights in Minnesota. That stadium's going to be rocking. This is their Super Bowl. It's not going to be an easy game for him to just go out there and throw all over that team. They still have a very good team. I think their defense is going to take a step up compared to what it was last year. So I do expect this to be a close game. I do think Ohio State pulls out the win. I think they're going to eventually, because of the power they have on offense, be able to make it look like it was a better game than it was, maybe pull away and win like 35-21, but that's like 2 late scores in the fourth quarter. I think it's going to be a close game throughout this and should hopefully be a very good test for them for what's coming next week as well. But I expect them to win, but I don't expect them to blow Minnesota out.
Is there a bigger insult than this is this team's Super Bowl? Like, really? No. Is there a bigger insult than that, especially coming from a fan? An insult? That's like the most condescending thing you could say to another. This is going to be a really big game for you because you're going to suck really bad. So,
they don't suck bad, though. You can't tell me that every Minnesota fan, just talking about Kane Fassell is a big Minnesota fan. If they beat Ohio State and knock them off, that's one of the biggest wins of the year of all college football, outside of Bama or Clemson getting knocked off by someone in their conference. I don't understand how that's an insult to them at all. Everybody wants to knock off Ohio State. It's like everyone wants to knock off Alabama. Everyone wants to knock off Clemson. That's not it. I'm not saying Minnesota sucks. They're not Kent State. They have a chance to win their division. And if they beat Ohio State, that makes it an even better chance.
I don't know how you
it's
can.
It's a little harsh to Kent State, by the way. They're not that bad.
Wow. I don't know how you can simultaneously
they're not that
say
great.
that they don't suck, but that it would be one of the biggest upsets in college football this year. It's got to be one of the other.
I didn't say it would be the biggest upset.
You did.
I didn't say it would be an upset.
You said it would be one of
It
the
would
biggest
be an
upsets
upset,
besides
yes.
Bama or
I think
Do
it would
either-
be one of the biggest upsets if with Minnesota.
Does anybody
beating
expect them to
Ohio
actually
State. No.
beat Ohio State? Exactly. Nobody's going to go out there and pick them outside of Minnesota fans are going to pick them to beat Ohio State. So that is an upset. That's the definition of an upset. I don't. It's not like they're going in with a 3-point. I don't know what the line is. I'm sure someone can look it up here in a minute. It's not 3 points.
But
So,
I think
yeah, so it's
anytime
an
Ohio
upset.
State loses is a big upset.
It's an
Anytime,
upset. Yeah.
anytime Ohio State loses, anytime Clemson loses, those are two of the biggest upsets of the year because of the conferences that they're in. They're not in the SEC where it's, anybody could beat anybody on any given week. And that's a little bit of a stretch, but like it's not as strong of a conference top to bottom. So there are like 2 or 3 games each year on both the Big Ten and ACC where you could circle and say maybe Ohio State or Clemson loses this game. But I don't know if Minnesota is one of those games that you would circle on Ohio State's schedule.
The thing about Minnesota is that their strength is the run game, right? Can they run it on Ohio State? Because I don't think they can stop Ohio State at all defensively. But
they're outside of their defensive line. I don't think that the Ohio State's defense is not good outside of that line. I don't think their linebackers are good.
The line is good.
But so is Minnesota's offensive line. I think that's where it's going to be a battle right there. If Ibrahim gets past the first level, he's going to score touchdowns. Those linebackers in secondary are not going to stop him. That's my point. And just to the upset thing, maybe I explained this wrong. Quiet, Felix.
All right.
If you're telling me if LSU were to beat Alabama this year, that would be considered an upset, right? I feel like that's kind of the same par. That's what I mean by that. I'm not trying to say Ohio State's the best team in the land. They're not. They're like.
Let's get one more game in here before we say goodnight to everyone. I don't know how the heck your Penn State and Indy Lions, Colin, are ranked after the season that they had last year, but the number 19 team in the country, and they take on Wisconsin to start the season. Two teams that are really looking to kind of rebound from last season, especially Wisconsin having dealt with the COVID outbreak in their locker room. From Graham Mertz to Jalen Berger to Theo Johnson, to figuring out who's the back to own in Happy Valley. There's a lot of storylines to track as far as campus to Canton leagues in this game.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you how Penn State's ranked. Their year last year was not really reflective of their talent level. They struggled very early on in the year. That Indiana game, very questionable win on Indiana's part, but we won't get into that too much. But they closed out the year very strong. They have a lot of talent on that roster. So I think they are deserving of a top 25 ranking. The big storyline on this game is going to be, one, how Wisconsin's offense looks after such a up and down year last year with a lot of COVID issues. Graham Mertz got COVID himself. He said it affected him throughout the year. He looked very good at sometimes, not very good at all in other games. So seeing him actually healthy, hopefully, is going to be very interesting against the Penn State defense. That the strength of that team is their secondary. So I'll be very intrigued to see about how Graham Mertz does against that. And then, like you touched on, who's going to emerge from that Penn State backfield. Austin and I have been talking a lot. We think it's going to be Noah Cain. I still feel pretty good about that based on all the buzz in this offseason. But Kevon Lee did have a strong year to close out last year, so it's not a foregone conclusion. Kevon Lee is going to have a role. And then Keziah Holmes is kind of an intriguing option as well, but I think it's mostly going to be between Cain and Lee.
Austin, is there something you wanted to add here before we
go? Wisconsin. That's all I got to add.
All right. Hey, thank you for letting us take you from coast to coast tonight. Week 0 is in the books. Week 1 is on the way. And that's when we're going to see you next, 9/4, 10 o'clock-ish, probably after the primetime game, after that Clemson-Georgia game. All right, everybody. Have a good night.